Thursday at 3:30, we bring on our guy, Brian Baldinger. He is host of the Odyssey original podcast, The Best Football Show, featuring daily breakdowns of all the exciting moments across the league. Baldy joins us now. What's happening, Baldy?
What's up, Jack? How we doing, man?
How's it going, Baldy? We're 2 weeks away from the draft. Obviously can't wait for it. Eagles pick 22. I'm curious your opinion on this. Defensively, which do you view as the bigger need at 22? Is it corner or is it edge?
Well, they signed Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat is back and Brandon Graham came back. I would say corner is a bigger need right now. Depending on how you value the different guys and everything, but just looking at the struggles they had last year trying to defend the pass, only Washington gave up more passing touchdowns than the Eagles last year. I would say corner looks like the bigger issue right now.
Yeah, when you look at this defense, Baldy, I think I asked you this last week about the scheme that Vic Fangio would run, and it was pertaining more to the front. When you look at the secondary, do you find Vic Fangio to be more of a zone guy or man guy?
Well, I think he can adjust depending on what he has. I mean, Last year, for a large part, he had Xavier Howard along with Jalen Ramsey, and they play a lot of man scheme because those guys are pretty good at that style. But I think depending on where he's been, in San Francisco when they went to a Super Bowl with Vic was the defense coordinator there. They were largely a zone team. He was in Chicago. They led the league in takeaways when Khalil Mack first got there, and they were pretty good in that department. So I think it kind of depends on really what his personnel is. I think he's going to cater to it.
Okay.
Baldy, you mentioned the cornerback position, and the one corner that seems to be linked to the Eagles more than most is Nate Wiggins. What can you tell us about him? What kind of player would they be getting in a Nate Wiggins?
Well, he's probably got to jump around the shower just to get wet. He's probably 170 pounds. I don't know if he's ever going to really get thick at all, but he's the fastest corner in the draft. He ran, I think, a 4.28 if I remember correctly. He can flat out run with anybody down the field. And he's long and he's lean, and he runs fast. Although his short shuttle or his first 10-yard split wasn't that much faster than anybody else's. But once he opens up his stride, he was faster than anybody. There was a lot of guys that had a faster 10-yard split, like Quinion Mitchell and some guys. But, you look at Max Melton at Rutgers, they were all faster than the 10-yard split. But his long speed is better than anybody's out there. But you're getting a long, slender corner, a little bit like Emmanuel Forbes was in Washington last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cooper DeJean is a guy that's also on the Eagles' radar, and a lot of fans here are starting to sort of clamor for him at that cornerback position, sort of that Swiss Army knife player. You think he's somebody that could fit in what the Eagles are trying to do with Vic Fangio? And B, what type of player do you think he's going to be at this NFL level?
I think he's elite. I think he's a Pro Bowl player. I know people label him a Swiss Army knife because he was a punt returner and, I played inside and outside. But I think this guy is a flat-out corner. And he's got all the skills necessary. He can play off the ball. He can jam you at the line of scrimmage. He can play with his butt to the sideline, include the whole passing game coming at him. I think he's got a variety of ways that he can play. But I think he's a Pro Bowl player. And I think when you draft him, I think you're drafting a corner that, he tackles really, really well. He's very physical. He gives you punt return ability. And, I think he can be your number one corner, travel with, elite receivers in his business. I think he's shown all those abilities so far.
Do you think there's much difference between like a DeJean or Nate Wiggins that you can probably get at 22? Or do you think it's worth trading up to go get like the Terrion Arnolds of the world or some of these other big-name corners, the Toledo kid? Like, is there really that much of a difference? Or if you were Howie, would you just stay at 22 and maybe let one of those corners fall to you?
I think there is a difference. Like, even if last year at this time, Kool-Aid McKinstry at Alabama was probably the number one rated corner. And then he dropped a little bit, and Terry and Arnold really kind of took off this year because of all the plays that he made. He just was a heck of a playmaker this year in Alabama, and his tackling was excellent. And so, we're talking about a 6-foot corner at 190 pounds and, really showed up on tape. But I think Quinyon Mitchell would be the number one corner if he was playing at Alabama, but he played at Toledo. So people sort of knock him down. But, his speed is, you see it. Like, you see his quickness, his speed, his burst when he breaks on a football. I think that guy is worth going to get. And I think you probably have to, you can't stay there where the Eagles are and get Quinyon Mitchell. I think he'll be gone. So I think you got to move up, get a guy like that right now.
Yeah, that's interesting because now we're all Baldy because where the Eagles sit at 22, there's like a handful or slightly more than a handful of players where the Eagles could go, and even we as fans aren't necessarily consensus on who they should take if they stay at 22. We also know how he likes to move up and down the draft board. Mm-hmm. Is there a player, because I think he's more likely to move up than he is to move back. Is there a player that you could see that they can have a lot of interest in, and it's regardless of the position, that they be moving up, willing to move up to get?
I think Troy Fautano from Washington is a guy that they would consider moving up if you feel like there's been a run with Alt and Olu off the board, maybe even Fuaga. Like, I could see them going after Fautano because he started at left tackle at Washington, but I think you could plug and play him at right guard next to Lane. And, I think you'd have another Pro Bowl right side. Like, I think this is a guy like Jack Martin, like Quentin, Nelson, that spent a good left tackle in college, but maybe a Pro Bowl guard in the NFL. I think they kind of feel like that. I know they've studied him, and worked him out, all that kind of stuff. So I think he's a guy that fits into their plans that they might think about moving up for. They might consider moving up for one of the, elite pass rushers, whether it's, Chop Robinson right now or, a guy like, I don't know, Dallas Turner. Like, if any of those guys drop, I think they would consider moving up for one of the tackles or one of the edge rushers right now. I mean, they did that with Fletcher Cox back in 2012, and it turned out to be, obviously a great trade, type of player that Fletcher became.
Yep.
Yeah, and apparently, Baldy, this offensive line class is rated really, really high. I guess the thing is, what did you guys see from Tyler Steen last year? I mean, he was a second-round pick. We know about, Stoutland U. Is it more about getting Lane's replacement rather than not believing in Tyler Steen? Like, how big of a need do you think offensive line is?
I think it's big. They lost Suapeta. They lost Jack Driscoll. Of course, Kelsey retires. So that's three guys that were dressed every Saturday or every Sunday last year that aren't there. So their depth is a real concern right now, I think, for the Eagles in the offensive line. They brought in Matt Hennessy, who, to me is an undersized center coming out of Temple. Fred Johnson's still there. He was kind of a swing tackle, never really got on the field. The Raven Clark guys that they brought in. I don't think the drafting Lane Johnson's replacement is much of a consideration because I don't really think Lane is considering retiring. But I do think a guy that has flexibility that, Lane has been a couple games the last few years with ankle injuries. I do think a guy that can step in and play at a high level of tackle and maybe start at guard like a Fautano can or even a Fuaga. Like, I think there's real consideration with both of those players. I think they're very coachable. I think they're very talented, and I think they're excellent in the run game. I think there's some consideration there. Not that Tyler can't do it, because I think he can, but I do think they want a guy that has more position flexibility and maybe more power, and use Tyler as a swing guard, swing tackle coming off the bench. I think they would like to upgrade the guard position at this point.
Baldy, to one of the guys they're definitely banking on having more of a breakout year if they don't go edge rush in the first round is Nolan Smith. What did you see from Nolan Smith last year? Is it a good bet with that, or should they maybe consider hedging here? Any concern about Nolan Smith?
I think there's concern. I mean, he's undersized. We knew that, though, coming out of Georgia, so that's not anything. But like the defensive staff is different. I didn't think they did a great job of developing these guys. I don't think Jordan Davis developed well. I think you could say the same thing over the course of a season of, Nolan Smith right now. But, the talent is still there. But, look, outside of the fact that he runs fast and he's got a good burst, we really haven't seen much. Now, it takes these guys a year, sometimes 2 years to develop. So I'm not down on Nolan Smith, but there wasn't much to go on by what he did a year ago. And so I think there's player development that has to take place on that side of the ball with a number of players that we really haven't seen to this point.
Yeah, I got you. Baldy, appreciate the time. Next week, we'll be 1 week away from the NFL draft. Exciting time, and thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, Jack, you got it. Take it right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, there he goes. Baldy. Make sure to check out or to follow the Best Football Show with Brian Baldinger on the Odyssey app or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.